Okay, Yehudim Hoysa V'Simcha V'Sasson V'Kar, that the Yidden had light and joy and happiness and glory. Pirush Razal, the Chazal explained, Ora zu Torah. What's the light referring to? It's referring to Torah. The Simcha is a Yom Tov. Simcha is referring to Yom Tov. As it says, Moedim L'Simcha. Torah is Ora because it has to do, it says that the Torah is called Or, that HaTorah Or, Kidei Mitzvah Torah Or. And then Simcha is a Yom Tov because, again, Moedim L'Simcha. V'Sasson zu Mila, they bring a pasuk in Tehillim which proves that Sasson has to do with the bris. V'Yikar elu tefillin. Tefillin is the glory, like the Yikar, the Peir Chashav, Reishecha, something that is a glorifying thing upon your head. When you understand, like the analysis of our Rebbeim, our Nesiim, starting from Kvayt Yisad Morazakim from the Alter Rebbe, Kvayt Yisad Morazakim, the Mittler Rebbe, Kvayt Yisad Morazakim Tzedek, the Tzemach Tzedek, Nesiim Shalachriz, and the Nesiim following that they speak about Madua Hudgish B'Pasik Zeh. Why was it emphasized in this pasuk? Sha'oira v'simcha v'chulu hayu laYehudim, that this light and joy, etc., was for the Yehudim. V'arim b'pshutam shel ksuvim hayu movim b'lav hachi shameduber hu b'Yehudim. From the simple reading of the pasuk, we're talking about that the Yidden were celebrating, the Yidden were happy, the Yidden were joyous, and therefore, whatever the pasuk is talking about was, and could have said, the nation had, everybody was happy, whatever. What's the emphasis over here, like Yehudim? Moving as if this is understood. There is a specific connection with these topics, with the Yidden. The way Yidden are specifically called Yehudim, that is the connection. But we have to understand the reason for the connection between the two. Why is it specifically that Yehudim, as they are specifically called by the name of Yehudim, they had these four things of Torah and Yom Tov and Milah and Tefillin. She says, we have to understand the reason for this. Also, we need to understand the according to what the Chazal explained. That Ora goes on Torah, and the Chazal bring a pasuk. So it says, the beginning of the pasuk, it says, Kinei mitzvah, the mitzvah is a candle, but the conclusion that matters for the Chazal over here to bring a proof is the Torah. Torah is considered a light. In Cain, if so, if that is the reason why we are associating the word Ora with Torah, so it should have said that Yidden had light in the masculine, in the Lashon Zachar, like it says in the pasuk. The pasuk upon which they bring a proof from is the pasuk that says V'Torah is Or. And over there it uses the word Or in the masculine. Why does it say the word for light in the feminine over here? The Oid, and in addition to this, according to the explanation of Chazal about this idea of Ora v'Simcha v'Sasson V'Kar is referring to specific mitzvahs. Yuksha b'Yoser, it's even more difficult. Madu in the Kram Yisrael v'Pasuk B'Shem Yehudim Dafke. It's even more difficult why Yidden are called in this pasuk Yehudim. In other words, if we just learn it in the simple meaning, it's talking about light, it's talking about joy, it's talking about happiness, it's talking about glory. Okay, why does he have to emphasize Yehudim? It's a question. But when you explain that Ora is going on Torah and Simcha is going on Yom Tov, etc., it becomes even more difficult, the choice of specifically the name and the title called Yehudim. It indicates that somehow these things, Torah, Yom Tovim, Milah, and Tefillin, is specifically connected with the level that Yidden are called by the name Yehudim. How come? Way before Yidden were called Yehudim, which was more or less in the Megillah, we also have all these mitzvahs, Kol in Yonim Elum, Hey Mitzvahs Asmina Torah, all these ideas that the Chazal learn out from the Ora of Simcha V'Sasson V'Kar, they're all mitzvahs aseh. Limudat Torah, Torah study, V'Simchas Yom Tov, and the joy of Yom Tov, Milah, Tefillin. And not only that, the whole entire Torah is likened to tefillin. In the Chamish Chumshei Torah, where it's listed all these things as mitzvahs. In other words, that the Yidden were obligated to do all these things of tefillin and bris milah and Torah and Yom Tov. Yidden were not yet called in the Chamish Chumshei Torah with the name and therefore the level, whatever it indicates, the level of Yehudim. The Torah is a nimtzarak Megillah. This description is only found in Megillah Esther. Shenitna kama v'kama doris achresh Yisrael kvar kiyum was called mitzvahs that was given many generations after Yidden fulfilled all the mitzvahs. Ubetoichem es mitzanal, and amongst them all the mitzvahs they were fulfilling for thousands of years was included all the mitzvahs that the Chazal hinted in Ora, ושמחה, וששון, which is Torah, Yom Tov, Milah, Tefillin. So if we have already all the mitzvahs, even before we were called Yehudim, so why does he emphasize La Yehudim? All of a sudden, when we're at the level of Yehudim, whatever that is, that's when we had Torah, that's when we had Simchas Yom Tov, that's when we had Bris Milah, that's when we had Tefillin. Tefillin we had even before we reached the level, before we were called by the name Yehudim. Second paragraph on the page. The point of the explanation in all of this is by first prefacing the explanation by explaining why Torah is specifically called light in the feminine and not light in the masculine. The idea behind this is in Torah there are two levels. Bechinas Torah Oir or Bechinas Oiram, the masculine level of Torah and the feminine level. Now, Oir, as we're soon going to explain, is not just feminine. Oir has another meaning as well. Bechinas Oir Yeshba Beis Pirushim Havchim, and in the word Oiram, there are two opposite meanings. Pirush Echad, one explanation is the Oira Huloshin Maf'il. Oira means the thing that makes the light come. Like an expression of the Mittler Rebbe, it's a grammatical term. It's that thing that's responsible for the bringing forth of the light. The Bechinas Mokir Oir, because the source, the level of the source of the light, that is the source that affects the level of Torah Oir that we will explain later on. In other words, there's the Torah Oir, and then there's Oira, which causes the Torah Oir. That's one meaning in Oira. Pirish Beis, a second meaning, which is the opposite in a way of the first meaning we just mentioned. The Oira Lashon Nekeva. Oira is a feminine expression for light. Shubachinas Oira HaMakabel, it indicates that light which is a receiver, not something that is a source, not something that makes the Pa'ula of Torah. From this is also understood in other matters of the Pasuk. Simcha v'sasam v'ikar, shagam b'hem yesh beis b'chinas. In all of these levels in the Pasuk, not just in Oida, there's also two levels, u'kfishi is bar lakaman, as it will be explained further in the Maimon. So the Rebbe goes on, the third paragraph will be a reinion, who the explanation of this matter is, in the Amar, as all the Chazal said, Noivlis chachma shol ma'ila Torah. The Torah that we have down here below, the Torah that we study here in our world, are what fell off and came down, descended from the level of chachma above. Noivel is like when leaves fall off a tree, you call it noivel. So the same thing, the chachma above, when it fell down here, like so to speak, that's the Torah. Torah is only like, almost like the waste, that which falls off from Chachma. In a similar vein, it's explained in the writings of the Arizal. The reason for why the Torah started with the letter Beis, because Torah is the Torah of the world of Bria. But there is higher than the Torah as it is down here. Yes, Torah Hatzilus is the Torah of the world of Atzilus. So the Beis indicates a second level, and perhaps also the Beis is like a Rosh Tevis for Bria, whereas Aleph is a Rosh Tevis for Atzilus. Not sure, but at least it indicates that it's a secondary level. It's not the ultimate level of Torah, the Torah the way it's not Atzilus. This level of the two levels of Torah, the way it's in its higher level versus the way it's in its lower level. So in the Sfiris, there's also the higher level of Torah and the lower level of Torah. There's the level of Torah, the lower level of Torah, that's associated with the sphere of Chachma, at least, like we were speaking about before, that which falls off of Chachma, but still has to do with Chachma. And then there's a level of Torah that's beyond the sphere of Chachma. Like, for example, in our intellect down here below, there's the power of that gives forth ideas, the source of that, where the ideas come out from. It's the source of the intellect. It causes the intellect to come forth. So that level, the level that's higher than Chachma, and the level by us, which is called Koyach HaMaskil, that's the level of Oira and the way that it's causing it, the source of Torah, similar to by us having Koyach HaMaskil. Koyach HaMaskil is not called Oira because our Koyach HaMaskil is not necessarily Torah, but the point is that the Koyach HaMaskil's function down here below, by us, is corresponding to the level of Oira of Torah, the level that's the source of Torah, higher than the sphere of Chachma. Just like by us, the Koyach HaMaskil is higher than the actual Seichel that comes out from it. This is connected with the second meaning of the word Oira, Lashon Nekeva, said in the feminine. It's the idea of receiving. How is that connected? Seemingly, we said it's two opposites. Drawing down all the way from the source of Torah, not just having it the way it's the lower level, the level of Noivus Chachma, but to have all the way from the source of Torah. Higher than Chachma, it's only when it comes down into the receiver, when the Torah is Oira in a way of dealing with the makabel of the receiver. With this will be understood why the Torah, specifically here in the Megillah, is called Oiram. Chazal said in the pasuk, the Yidden fulfilled and the Yidden received. So it doesn't make any sense, or accepted. Let's even talk about it simply put. We're talking about that Mordechai instituted certain things about the mitzvahs of Purim. So the Yidden fulfilled and then they accepted. It should be the other way around. They accepted what Mordechai HaTzadik said and then they fulfilled it. So because of that, the Chazal learn, Kiyamu Masha Kiblu Kvar. They now fulfilled what they accepted a long time ago. The B'Shas Matan Torah, during the giving of the Torah, Kafa, Kodesh Baruch Aleim Sahar Kegigis Cholud, Hashem bent the mountain over them like a barrel and seemingly coerced them to accept the Torah and told them, if you accept the Torah, fine and good. If not, I'll just drop this mountain on you. As we'll explain what the spiritual meaning of it will explain soon. From here, it's a great protest for the Torah, top of the second page. In other words, there is a term in Chazal that if a person was coerced into a sale, let's say, of a piece of land, so he goes to Bezdin afterwards and he's Moiser Moida'a, and he places like a protest before Bezdin and says that this was done under coercion. So the Chazal use this term and say that once Torah tells us, or once Chazal told us that Hashem held the mountain over our heads, so it's a Maidah Rabbalei Rais. It's just like a person going into Bezdin and saying this was a deal that it was done under coercion. The same thing, the Torah Raisa was also Maidah Rabba. We're giving it's a great protest against that we were coerced into accepting the Torah. That was then by the Kiblu, when they actually first accepted the Torah. And only the days of Achashverosh, then they again accepted it and received the Torah out of their own goodwill, meaning because they wanted to. because they chose, they could have assimilated during the entire year, as the Rebbe is going to explain, and they didn't. That means they chose it out of their own free choice. So why is it used the word kiyamu? The oz paul was kiyama inyan. Then they affected the establishment of the matter of Torah by the Yidden, that it's really solidified. And here the Rebbe borrows again and goes similar to what the Gemara says, Moidah Rabba. He uses kiyamu in a halachic sense. By kiyum kipshutai, like the literal idea of kiyum. In Chazal, in the Gemara, it speaks about validation of documents. A validation of a document is called a kiyum. So if a person challenged a document and says, I never wrote this, I never signed this, it says over here that I borrowed money, I never happened. So you take the document to Bezdin. Bezdin validates the signatures of the witnesses. Either they trace down the witnesses or they find other people that know the witnesses' signatures, and they validate the shtar. It's called kiyum shtaris. So the Rebbe says, kiyimu mashakiblu kvar is also, like you're saying, validating the Yidden's acceptance. That it adds power in the thing that's now validated. There's another point that the Rebbe often mentions, that there is a document that's been validated by Bezdin will have greater strength and power than a document that was never challenged. Even though document A was never challenged, but there's a potential for it to be challenged. But a document that was already challenged, and Bezdin validated it, that's much stronger. So the same thing over here, that the kiyum that happened in the times of Esther and Mordechai gives our connection with the Torah a much stronger connection. The Misham v'hala kvar ein midah chulu. From now on, once it happened, the events of Megillas Esther, there's no more great protest that the Torah was done under and via coercion. Move on. The Torah is referred to as Ora in other places, in the masculine. Why specifically, of all places, do we refer to Torah in the feminine, specifically in the Megillah? Because the time of the Megillah was the receiving. The feminine is the receiving of the Torah. The way the Torah was given from above, a matan Torah, where it's only the masculine shows on ashpa. So then it's only Torah oir of Torah in the masculine. Through the fulfillment and validation and accepting it in the times of Achashverosh, that's why it says oira in the feminine, the expression that indicates the receiver. In other words, we are taking it in. So our oira in the lower level, the mekabel, the feminine, causes that instead of just having the level of Torah oir in the masculine, which was by matan Torah, now in the times of Achashverosh, because we have the oira in the feminine that we received it, so now we can get all the way from oira, the level that's the source of Torah above. The canal, like we said before, through validating something, like we said in Bezdin, we add to the power of the thing. The same thing, we validated our acceptance of the Torah, so it's much stronger, it gets from a higher source. The level of Oira, that is the cause, the maker, that's the source of the light. In the service of a person, that's the idea of Torah, the way it's in the power of us down here below. That when we do Torah, we accept Torah, that awakens within us the self-sacrifice, which self-sacrifice for Hashem is beyond Torah. Why is it beyond Torah? In Torah is not mentioned a reason for self-sacrifice. And in other Mamarim, he says that it's not mentioned self-sacrifice explicitly in the Torah. In other words, the mitzvah of giving up one's life for the sanctification of Hashem's name, the mitzvah of Kiddush Hashem, is not explicitly mentioned in the Torah. It says v'nigdashti b'sech b'nei Yisrael, but it doesn't say explicitly that if a person challenges your Yiddishkeit, you should give up your life for it. Why is it not mentioned in Torah? Because Mesiras Nefesh is higher than Torah. As we know throughout Chassidus, and beginning in Tanya, that the self-sacrifice that a Yid has for Torah mitzvahs, for Hashem, comes from the essence of the soul. So that is similar to the Ora that's higher than Torah, the source of Torah. The same thing, the Mesiras Nefesh within a person comes from his essence beyond the level of Torah. But it begins with the person's own service. Just like how did we tap into Ora above, higher in the level of Torah? That's when we had the Ora in the way of Kabbalah. The same thing by a Yid in his service, when he has the level of Torah, that he works on Torah on his own, so that awakens the self-sacrifice of a Yid. Perhaps this is similar to what it says, that Mordechai had brought 22,000 Jewish children together to learn Torah. Perhaps that's related to what he's saying now, that the Torah b'koach tachten awakened the Mesiras Nefesh. And that is that through all Jewish people, from youth till the elderly, young children and women, for almost an entire year, they were ready for self-sacrifice. Actually, also, it didn't even arise in their mind a foreign thought, like the Alter Rebbe says in Torah, which only a person of the Alter Rebbe's stature could say what went on in the Yidden's mind. He can maybe talk to the facts, but he knew, only the Alter Rebbe knew, that the Yidden did not even consider assimilating the nations around them, adopting and the ways of nations around them, so they shouldn't be found out as Yidden and be killed as Yidden. So through that Mesiras Nefesh, in days of Paul, Usakim b'Torah, they also affected the validation of Torah, like we said before. When the Yidden had the self-sacrifice, that established that their acceptance of Torah was a solid acceptance of Torah. They drew down from the level of Ora, which is the source of the light of Torah. Now we're getting back to that initial question, why Yidden in this pasuk are called by the name Yehudim. Because drawing down the level of Ora, it's through the fact that they are a level of Yehudim. The Yehudi who call me Shemoide B'chol HaTorah Kula V'Kayv Zara. Who is a Yehudi? Someone that admits in the entire Torah and denies Avodah Zarah. So that means the person's own work. Hainu Avodah B'Koyach HaTachten by Dog Murad Mesiras Nefesh. The Avodah by the person's Koyach down here below, in a total admittance. Yehudi from the word admitting, until Mesiras Nefesh. So that's why over here, where it's crucial to draw down the Ora level of Torah, it had to be the Kabbalah, it had to be the self-sacrifice, etc. So it says it La Yehudim in our pasuk. So we said earlier that just like in Torah, which is Ora, has in it two levels, the same thing, all the other things, Simcha, Sas, and Vikar has two levels. So now he's going to explain two levels in Simcha. In a similar vein, there are two levels in the second idea in this pasuk. In Yana Simcha, the idea of joy. The Simchas Yom Tov B'chlal, the joy of Yom Tov in general, is measured and has limitation. Like the Rambam rules, is brought down both in the Big Shulchan Aruch and the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch. Should be Yomim Tovim, when it came, different Yomim Tovim in Eretz Yisrael, Hoy Bezin Sholchem Shluchim K'dei Lavtiach Shasimcha Tivim Didvak Bol. Bezin would send out messengers and officers to ensure that the Simcha should not get out of hand. The Afshe Simcha Zu Klos in Yonahu Mesiras Nefesh Shalamayim Didvak Bol. Though joy in general is about breaking through boundaries, breaking through barriers, Simcha put together, which is from the same level of self-sacrifice. So what's it mean that they made sure to contain it? Since the Simcha of Yom Tov was given to them by Matan Torah when he bent over them the mountain like a barrel, It's the way Simcha came from above. Like it's explained at a different place, that the har, the mountain that's referring to, is not be taken as a physical mountain, but it's to be taken as a great love, because it says Avram nidmalek har. By Avram, it's likened like a mountain. Avram was the level of love, meaning that Hashem revealed to the Yidden a great love. V'kaf aleim har kegigis, and he bent over them a mountain like a barrel. Inyan ham shachas ha'avarabel and Shams Yisrael, it's the drawing down of the great love to Yidden. And therefore, since it was all from above, it's all limited because it wasn't their doing. It didn't come from the Yidden. It came because they were overwhelmed by Hashem's great love, so they couldn't help but respond to Hashem. That was all before Yehudim, before the Megillah. Let's just finish the paragraph. Yehudim as opposed to the joy. That was a result of the self-sacrifice of Yidden down here below, that they had the level of Yehudi. They were admitting in Elikuz, since it came about through a low power, the power of below. Therefore, it's beyond every measure and boundary. Though the one below and his avoida, it's only by being empowered and receiving from above. That the level of oida and the feminine, which is toida, means we're receiving from the toida oida, which is masculine. That is initially that we only receive. Afterwards, through a person's service from below, it reaches and awakens deeper matters until the joy is beyond measure and boundary. That's what it means. Like Yehudim, there was a joy yomtiv. Through Yidden being the level of having the bitl of Yehudim. Through that, it affected the avoided that the joy of Yom Tov should be beyond all measure and boundary. Not just the joy of Purim itself. That's also called Yom Tov, like it's explained in a different place. In addition to that, that the Purim Simcha expands all over. From Purim, the Simcha of mitzvah expands on the entire year. And especially the Simchas Yom Tov, that Yom Tov itself and the Simcha of Yom Tov itself is a mitzvah. So it's a mitzvah to be rejoicing on Yom Tov. What does that mean? The rejoicing on every Yom Tov. Rejoicing on Sukkot, the Rebbe says, comes from my rejoicing on Purim before. The Chol HaYom Tov Nikar B'Hamarosh Vashpash Simchas Purim. All the Yom Tovim, it's recognizable in them, the impression and the influence of the joy of Purim. That a person is obligated to become spiced and inebriated on Purim until he doesn't know the difference between, meaning he's beyond knowledge and reason, beyond limitations.